he is giving us an association. So I will introduce Prabhu to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis here. His Grace Mukunda Datta Prabhu was born in Los Angeles and joined ISKCON in 1976 after reading the books of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. He received formal training in North Indian classical music and holds a graduate degree in South Asian languages and literature from the University of Washington, where he specialized in both Sanskrit and medieval Hindi. He has lectured worldwide for many decades on various topics from Vedic literatures. In 2002, he was invited to be a charter member of Sastric Advisory Council to ISKCON Governing Body Commission. Soon thereafter, he joined Bhaktivedanta Book Trust, BBT, serving as a Sanskrit translator and editor. He and his wife, Srimurti Dasi Mataji, live in Vrindavan, India. So we are really happy and fortunate, blessed to be having Prabhuji's association today. So let us all very enthusiastically welcome Prabhu by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra 3 times. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Over to you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Dandar pranams.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be in this august assembly of Vaishnavas. All of you, please accept my humble obeisances. We will try to speak a few words tonight by Srila Prabhupada's grace only about the Pandava Nirjala Ekadassi, as we're observing today, many of us. So let us, as always, begin with Mangalacharana. Om Jnana Timarantasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tushe Namaha Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Madgavirapi Gopala Swikuryat Kripaya Yadi Tadeva Sambhaya Pitva Shrishye Yuttat Priyajanaha. There are some general principles, Narad Muni explains in the Srimad Bhagavatam, that have to be followed if we are to qualify ourselves as bona fide human beings. To be a bona fide human being is more than just being a biologically correct Homo sapiens. And he says that among these general principles to be followed by all human beings are truthfulness, mercy, austerity, bathing twice a day, tolerance, discrimination between right and wrong, control of the mind, control of the senses, nonviolence, celibacy, charity, reading of scripture, simplicity, satisfaction, rendering service to saintly persons, taking leave of unnecessary engagements, observing the futility of unnecessary activities in human society, remaining silent and grave and avoiding all unnecessary talk, considering whether the body or the soul, one is the body or the soul, distributing food equally to all living entities, both men and animals, seeing every soul, especially in the human form, as a part of the Supreme Lord, hearing about the activities and instructions given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the shelter of all saintly persons, chanting about these activities and instructions, always remembering these activities and instructions, trying to render service, performing worship, offering obeisances, becoming a servant, becoming a friend, and surrendering one's whole self. O King Yudhishthira, these 30 qualifications must be acquired in the human form of life. Simply by acquiring these qualifications, one can satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why am I mentioning this? There's a few reasons. Number one, only human beings can generally take to Krishna consciousness. So it's an important thing to know what is a human being. And secondly, in the beginning of this list, we have mention of austerity. And Srila Prabhupada has glossed this term austerity as observing fasts on certain days of the month, such as Ekadashi. So today is Ekadashi, and it's a very special Ekadashi. In the 11th canto, Krishna also explains to Uddhava, this is 11th canto, chapter 11, texts 34 through 41. I won't read the whole list, but he gives a number of things that we should do in order to qualify for eternal life. And among that, the items in that list, he says one should also observe religious vows, vratas, such as Ekadashi. So Ekadashi is an important thing. We're just going to say a few general words on Ekadashi. On May 23rd, 1969, in New Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada explained Ekadashi Vrata. He says it's required. Bhajante Mam Dridha Vrata. He's explaining this idea from Bhagavad Gita. He says the purpose of Ekadashi Vrata is that today we should not eat much usual food or grains. The actual prescription is fasting. And he mentions Nirjala Ekadashi in particular. Nirjala means there are many devotees who do not take even water. Water, drinking water, according to the Shastra, is taking food. It is drinking of food, or it's also considered to be no food sometimes. We can take it both ways. We know this from Ambarish Maharaj in the 9th canto. So sometimes drinking water is excused as upavas, also fasting. But there are many devotees who don't even drink a drop of water whole day and night. They fast and observe Ekadashi Vrat. And that night is called Harivasara. Harivasara means the whole night they would chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is called Vrata, Dridha Vrata. In your piece, Dridha Vrata. So in Mumbai in 1971, at the famous Pandal programs there, Srila Prabhupada also mentioned that the tapasya will be that all devotees will observe fasting from morning till evening. Just like Ekadashi day, there is no eating sumptuously. Simply you take little fruits, flowers, try to avoid that also. You don't even take water. That is really Ekadashi. But because we cannot do it in the Kali Yuga, the time is different. Therefore, we are allowed to take little fruits and milk, which is called anukalpa. These are the different methods of tapasya. Now, I mentioned already that in the 9th canto, chapter 4, text 29 to be specific, it's mentioned to worship Lord Krishna. Maharaj Ambarish, along with his queen, who was equally qualified, observed the vow of Ekadashi and Dwadashi for 1 year. Purport, Prabhupada writes, to observe Ekadashi Vrata and Dwadashi Vrata means to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Those interested in advancing in Krishna consciousness must observe Ekadashi Vrata regularly. In his commentary on this verse, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also adds that there's mention of this Ekadashi vow here because he wants to show the steadiness of Ambarisha's bhakti. If we want to become steady in bhakti, we have to perform Ekadashi. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written in his famous song, Shuddha Bhakta Charanayano Bhajana Anukula, Bhakta Seva Paramasiddhi Prema Latikara Mula. The root of the creeper of devotion and the supreme perfection, actually, is Bhakta Seva. All the activities of pure devotional service, this is called Bhajana Anukula, but the topmost of them is to take shelter of the dust of the lotus feet of the pure devotee. Just as a creeper wraps around a tree, we've also seen it. Similarly, the devotees, they take shelter of the pure devotees. Then he says, Madhavatiti Bhakti Janani. Madhavatiti means this Ekadashi. This is how Prabhupada is. I'm just reading Prabhupada's own explanation of this song. He says, just like Ekadashi, Ekadashi is called Madhavatiti. So Madhavatiti Bhakti Janani. If we observe the performance of Madhavatiti, then that becomes the mother of our devotional service. Bhakti Janani Jatana Palan Kari. You have to observe this Madhavatiti very carefully. Palan means you protect it, you take care. In 1969, on September 30th, Srila Prabhupada also wrote to Madhusudana, my god brother, we observe Ekadashi from sunrise to sunrise. Sometimes people get confused about this because in Western calculation, the day begins at midnight and ends at midnight. And Prabhupada is refuting this conception. He says this is Western astronomical calculation, but the Vedic astronomical calculation begins either from the sunrise or the moonrise. Generally, it is sunrise. Therefore, sometimes the dates of our ceremonies, they don't exactly correspond. Now, this is important. Ekadashi is very important. Why is it important? We can read that in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, chapter 15, texts 8 through 10. One day, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu fell down at the feet of his mother and requested her to give him one thing in charity. His mother replied, my dear son, I will give you whatever you ask. And the Lord said, my dear mother, please do not eat grains on the Ekadashi day. Purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, from the very beginning of his childhood life, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu introduced the system of observing a fast on Ekadashi day. In the Bhakti Sandarbha, Srila Jiva Goswami, by Srila Jiva Goswami, there is a quotation from Skanda Purana admonishing that a person who eats grains on Ekadashi becomes the murderer of his mother, father, brother, and spiritual master. And even if he's elevated to a Vaikuntha planet, he falls down. Very serious words here from Skanda Purana. Prabhupada continues, on Ekadashi, everything is cooked for Vishnu, including regular grains and dal, but it is enjoined that a Vaishnava should not even take Vishnu prasadam on Ekadashi, if it's grains, that is. It is said that a Vaishnava does not accept anything eatable that is not offered to Lord Vishnu, but on Ekadashi, a Vaishnava should not touch even Mahaprasadam offered to Vishnu, although such Mahaprasadam may be kept for being eaten the next day. Again, we're talking about grains. It is strictly forbidden for one to accept any kind of grain on Ekadashi, even if it is offered to Lord Vishnu. Srila Prabhupada was very, very strict on this point, very strict. He would not tolerate any deviation from this particular rule. There are many rules, there are many ways to observe Ekadashi, but Srila Prabhupada emphasized only one rule, which is that you should not eat grains or beans also on Ekadashi. So that's something to keep in mind. It's important. And as this quotation from the Chaitanya Charitamrita illustrates very clearly, it's a serious matter. So Mother Shachi Devi replied to Nimai, "You've spoken very nicely. I shall not eat grains on Ekadashi." And from that day, she began to observe fasting on Ekadashi. Sometimes among the smartas, they say that if a woman has her husband with her, then she need not fast on Ekadashi. But it's clear here, Srila Prabhupada points out, that this is not the principle of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because the Vaishnavas, they accept these vratas not as a question of elevating themselves. Rather, they accept these vratas only for the purpose of pleasing Vishnu, because we know it's very clear Madhava is pleased on Ekadashi day, and for that reason only we very strictly follow the Ekadashi. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very serious about it. So I want to give you one example of Srila Prabhupada's general principle for Ekadashi. On July 5th, 1975, in Chicago, he was discussing with some disciples. Tamal Krishna said, "You were saying once that all of your initiated disciples should chant 25 rounds." And Prabhupada replies, "Minimum." Tamal Krishna says, "Minimum on this day, is that a rule we should follow in all of our temples?" Prabhupada says, "We are 16 rounds." Tamal Krishna, no, I mean on Ekadashi. And Prabhupada said, "Oh yes, on Ekadashi you should chant, no other business. Nirjala," he mentions the word. Tamal Krishna says, "No preaching work? Should they go out for preaching?" Prabhupada said, no, those who are preaching, not for them, but those who are sitting idle," he's laughing, "they have no other regulation. A preacher is so exalted, he hasn't got to follow any regulation," he laughs. "But don't take it cheaply," he's implying. Actually, if one is busy in preaching work, that is first class. Not my manufactured word, my Guru Maharaj. That Madhav Maharaj, he was a brahmachari, his name was Hayagriva, so he had to go somewhere, but he was sick. Guru Maharaj was informed that he was sick and said, "Today is Ekadashi, he cannot take his regular meals." So Guru Maharaj said, no, let him take immediately meals and go for preaching. This is the point. So Prabhupada would relax these rules. In fact, on other occasions, he said, "If I told you everything, you would faint." So the purpose of Ekadashi is not the many health benefits that it brings. It's not the many pious credits that it brings. It's not for the purpose of going to the heavenly planets even. Srimad Bhagavatam, 12th canto, 12th chapter, text number 60 says, if one hears Srimad Bhagavatam on the Ekadashi or Dvadashi day, he is assured of long life, and one who recites it with careful attention while fasting is purified of all sinful reactions. It's said that by observing Ekadashi, and that means hearing and chanting, we will get Artha, Kama, and Moksha. But again, devotees are more interested in pleasing the Lord, because we're cultivating a different kind of advancement. We're not trying to improve our conditional situation. We're not trying to become more pious or become more exalted in some way in the material realm. We're only trying to please Krishna. We know that Krishna is pleased when we follow Ekadashi, and therefore we follow Ekadashi. Now, of the 24 Ekadashis that occur throughout the year, because they come in every paksha, paksha means side or wing. The moon has two pakshas, the dark paksha, light paksha. In each paksha, there will be one Ekadashi. That means there are two in a month, which means there are 24 Ekadashis throughout the year. Out of all of those Ekadashis, they're all auspicious, they're all Madhavatithi, but out of all of them, one Ekadashi is the most difficult, and that is this Pandava Nirjala Ekadashi. It's also called Bhimaseni Ekadashi or just Nirjala Ekadashi in this Jeshta Mas, because it's very hot in Jeshta. At least in India, it's very hot. And to go without water in this month is not an easy thing. It is definitely an austerity, but that austerity pleases Krishna. He knows that we love him if we are willing to do this because he likes it, simply because he likes it. So, therefore, we're enjoined on Nirjala Ekadassi. It is the most benefit you get from this Ekadassi. In fact, it said, strictly following this Pandava Nirjala Ekadassi, that means not only not eating, but not taking even a drop of water, not even a drop, outside of course, Achman. We have to say Om Keshavaya Namaha, Om Narayanaya Namaha, Om Madhavaya Namaha for purification. But the Smriti injunction is that if you take one drop unnecessarily, more than your Achaman, or more than taking Charanamritam, then you might as well be drinking alcohol instead of water. That's how it's considered to be mana, saft manaha. So there are different levels of fast one can perform. The best thing is if you don't take even a drop of water, 24 hours from sunset the day before to sunrise afterwards. Actually, the vrata begins the night before. After the sun sets, then we perform Sandhya Vandanam, Gayatri Mantra, and any evening rituals that we perform. And we can take one meal that is not rice. Rice is not encouraged at night. So then the next day we rise early, we take our sacred bath. Sacred bath, what is a sacred bath? It means you have to bathe in the Brahma Muhurta, or at least you have to bathe before sunrise, because Brahma Muhurta and dawn are not the same thing. Brahma Muhurta means about an hour and a half before the sun rises. It's a very special time for any kind of spiritual activities or even religious activities. Before the hustle and bustle of the day gets started, when the mind is tranquil, and when the environment is also generally quiet and still, then it is a good time to practice our spiritual sadhanas, such as chanting japa. So in the morning, we take our bath, proper bath, and even if you're in a place like Kuwait or the United States or Europe or Australia or Africa, you can meditate upon Yamuna Devi. Yamuna Devi is so merciful. Even just remembering Yamuna Devi, even just desiring to bathe in her waters, Rupa Goswami says, you will become purified in your mind, in your heart, and you will get all auspiciousness in your life, and your sins will be eradicated. So we should do this, actually, even if we do not have the physical proximity of Yamuna Devi in Vrajatam or anywhere where she flows, that we can remember and we can offer prayers. Rupa Goswami has composed so many beautiful prayers. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, Chidananda Bhano Siddhananda Suno, ityadi. So many nice prayers glorifying Yamuna. We should remember her when we bathe. What else are you going to think about? Are you going to meditate on soap or the shower knobs or what you have to do today? Put your mind at Krishna's lotus feet and think of Yamuna, and she will think of you. We need that. So on Nirjala Ekadassi, one should bathe early in the morning, and then one should worship Vishnu very carefully. Generally, those who are twice initiated, they're worshiping Lord Narayana in the form of the Shalagram Shila, or they may have Giriraj Govardhan Shila, or at least they'll have some small murti to worship, Gopal, or Lakshmi Narayana, or Radha Krishna, or Sitaram, etc. One should do this, and one should fast. One should not eat, one should not drink anything. And so what do you do with all this time that you spare from not eating and sleeping and drinking? It's amazing if you analyze how much of our day goes by invested in these repetitive, but essentially animal processes of eating, sleeping, defecating, whatever we do. A lot of time is wasted. If we can, just put those aside at certain times of the year. And especially on this day, Nirjala Ekadassi, we get so much benefit. When we come to tirthas, any spiritual activities or even religious activities performed in a holy place, you get increased benefit. And it works like that chronologically as well. At certain times in the year, some times are more opportune for making spiritual advancement or religious advancement. And we should take advantage of them. This, of all the Ekadashis, this Pandava Nirjala Ekadashi is considered to be the topmost. It demands a great deal of austerity. My godbrother Gauridas Pandit has recalled from 1977, just before Srila Prabhupada returned to Vrindavan for the final journey, as they say. He was in Rishikesh, near the Ganga. And so Prabhupada had not been eating for practically a month. He had not eaten anything. And then Nirjala Ekadashi came. Even though it was 110 degrees outside, Gauridas is relating here. Upendra and I fasted all day. In the evening, I felt, how can I continue this? Maybe some of you, if you're fasting now, I think it's 6 p.m. in Kuwait or so, Kanhaya Desh, then how can I continue this? It's very difficult. It is difficult, but understand your difficulty pleases Krishna. He knows that you love him if you will do this just to please him. So that is the strength that we get. So Gauridas Pandit continues, somehow or other I did it. Next morning I was extremely weak. At lunchtime, Upendra brought Srila Prabhupada his plate and Prabhupada waved it off again. They're cooking every day. Even he's not eating, but they're trying to encourage, just like mothers do this also. So Upendra couldn't believe it. He said, Prabhupada, how is it that although we are young boys, when we fast for one day, we can hardly move, and yet here you're fasting for 30 days? How do you do it? And Prabhupada at this time was what? 80-something years old. Srila Prabhupada replied, I am living proof that the soul is not dependent on the body for sustenance, but rather the body is dependent on the soul. End quote. Gauridas Pandit continues, we were overwhelmed. Imagine, I mean, that is a very overwhelming thing to say. I'm going to repeat it just because it's so deep. Srila Prabhupada said, I am living proof that the soul is not dependent on the body for sustenance. Rather, the body is dependent on the soul. If you're going to stay up tonight, just invest some time in meditating on that for a while, because it is very valuable instruction that Prabhupada gave. And it's understandable completely that these two disciples were overwhelmed. Prabhupada was getting ready to leave the planet and was completely Krishna conscious and free from bodily identification. We've all seen the video. Days, maybe hours before Srila Prabhupada left, he's dictating his purports to the 10th canto. Look at the last purport that Prabhupada gave in the 10th canto. I believe it was chapter 13. And just see how lucid his instructions are, how clear his thinking was. No one who had not eaten for a month can think so straight, especially at 80-something years ago and a day from death. Think about it. This was Srila Prabhupada. This is why we take shelter of Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet in exactly the same way that a creeper takes shelter of a big tree. And this is why when Srila Prabhupada tells us that we have to fast on Ekadashi, this is why we take it seriously. Guru means heavy. How can you get heavier than this? This was Srila Prabhupada's great, wondrous qualification. No one like Srila Prabhupada anywhere in the world. We are so fortunate, all of us, to have either direct or even indirect association with his divine grace. We are so fortunate. Cannot be compared to anything else. Even if you perform 300 billion Ashwamedha Yajnas, that benefit is not the same of having 1 second in the presence of Srila Prabhupada, or even not even comparable to hearing from Srila Prabhupada's wonderful purports. Because Srila Prabhupada said, if you want to know me, read my books. You have better association with Srila Prabhupada by really submissively and keenly, with keen focus, studying his purports than if you even come into his physical presence. We've seen many cases, devotees had Srila Prabhupada's personal association, Vapu Sangha, but they did not take due advantage of the Vani Sangha. And therefore, their appreciation was superficial, and they benefited from it, Zurur. There's no question of that. But their benefit was not enough to keep them in Krishna consciousness. And they left, many of them. So the real thing, the eternal association with the spiritual master, is in the form of his instructions. And in our case, as members of ISKCON, we have so many instructions given by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, even in his books alone. What to speak of considering his conversations, his letters, all of which are preserved, many of which at least. And there are other things that are not written down as well. So many valuable instructions I've heard from my godbrothers who were in Prabhupada's association, and these instructions somehow have escaped all the biographies and all the Veda bases and whatever else we have. So the Vapu Sangha of the spiritual master is so important, but the Vani is the internal association. Vapu will come and go. But if you hold on to this Vani, you have his real essence forever. And that's available. He has kindly made that available to all of us in the form of his books. Therefore, it is any surprise that the 12th canto, which we've already quoted, says, if you invest your time on Nirjala Ekadassi, or any Ekadassi for that matter, in hearing from these books, you cannot imagine the benefit that you will get. A long life is a small thing. Even going back to Godhead is a small thing. To get pure devotional service is the rarest thing. And Srila Prabhupada is giving that to those who are ready to come to him with open palms and beg, Samit Pani Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam. So, these are just a few introductory words, actually, and general ideas about Ekadassi, with some emphasis on Nirjala Ekadassi. Ekadassi in general is described throughout the Puranas. There's Ekadassi Mahatmyam, and there's Brahma Vaivarta Purana, and there's Skanda Purana we've already read, Padma Purana also. Nirjala Ekadassi in particular is praised in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana. I'm not going to read those passages because they're very lengthy. And actually we would prefer to hear from our own Acharyas. Shukha Mukhad Amrita Drava Sanyutam. When we hear the same teachings that we can get from reading some scripture, when we hear the same thing from the lotus mouth of the pure devotee, especially our spiritual master, that is infinitely preferable. It becomes much more sweet in the same way that when a parrot pecks at the now we're getting in India, it is that season, so mango season. When a parrot pecks at that mango, it makes it sweeter. So when we hear instructions, or generic instructions from the scripture, but when we hear them from our spiritual master, or any Vaishnava in whom we have great faith and respect, then we can make much more advancement, and we appreciate it much, much more. So let's hear a short description from Sanatana Goswami. in his Hari Bhakti Vilas, where he discusses Nirjala Ekadashi in particular. This is in the 15th Vilas. He says, Atha Nirjala Ekadashi. We're beginning the vow of Nirjala Ekadashi. And he immediately quotes Padma Purana. This is described by Srila Prabhupada in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 17, text 15. If we are to discuss spiritual life, we have to do so authoritatively. And what does that mean? That means we have to supply Shastric references for everything we say. And here Sanatana Goswami as our Acharya. Acharya means he teaches by example. He's giving us that example. The first thing he mentions is, he gives a quote from Padma Purana. What does he say? It's a long excerpt. Bhishma Deva is talking to Vyas. I will just give a little bit of the background here. The Pandavas were all very religious, and they were very religiously, means strictly observing the Ekadashis, all 24 of them throughout the year. Especially Yudhishthir Maharaj was encouraging this. Bhimasen, as you know, he's called Vrikodara. He has fire in his stomach. We all have some fire in our stomachs, and we all have a slightly different degree. Some people can eat a lot. We all know them. Everybody, in every crowd, there's at least one or two of them. They can eat tremendous amounts. And Bhimasena was such that it was like as if the Agni himself was sitting in Bhima's stomach. So he had to eat. And so he was tormented every time these Ekadashis were coming. I just could not tolerate it. So difficult for him. We can't really imagine, because nobody here has, the fire god personally burning up everything that you eat. We have some weak representation in the form of Jakshadagni. Agni is manifested in different forms. Within the stomach, the heat that is generated to digest food, that is called Jakshadagni. It's mentioned also in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, but we don't have time to dilate too much on that. So Bhimasen once, he was so troubled by this and feeling overwhelmed by feelings of guilt. Anybody feel inadequate sometimes? You're not alone. Bhimasen also, he was feeling this. So he went to his spiritual master. Whenever we have problems in spiritual life, who doesn't have problems? We all have problems. It's not easy, as Prabhupada has already told us. It's Kali Yuga. So whenever we have a problem, especially if we cannot follow something, then we have to go to our spiritual master and seek not only clarification and direction, guidance, instructions, but blessings also. Because there's no path of progress in this world without the blessings of higher authority. So this is what Bhima did. Just as Sanatana Goswami is showing us the example how to speak, so in his practical daily affairs, Bhima is showing us by his example what to do if you encounter problems. So he came to Vyasa and he asked him, "Oh, grandfather, I'm unable to observe any fast. Oh Lord, what shall I do? Please tell me about a single vow that I could observe and attain maximum benefit." Thus, Vyasadeva said, "You should observe a complete fast without even drinking water on the Ekadashi during the fortnight of the waxing moon, either in the month of Jaishtha or Ashar. On that fast day, an intelligent person should totally avoid water, except for bathing and performing achaman. And he should not eat anything, knowing that this would break his vow." Actually, even before they got to this point, Bhima had tried to ask Vyasa what to do, and Vyasa said, no, you have to fast on Ekadashi. He's no doubt he supplied him with so many quotes like we've already heard in Prabhupada's purport from Skanda Purana, for example. So many sinful reactions they inhere in a person who dismisses the Ekadashi Vrat. So undoubtedly Vyasa was trying to encourage Bhima to follow and with these kinds of ideas. And Bhima was still, Kshatriyas can be stubborn. Bhima was still saying, I can't do that. just like Dhruva Maharaj, when he received an instruction from his spiritual master, he said, this is not for me. I'm a Kshatriya. I'm seeking not exactly vengeance, but at least I one-upmanship I want. A kingdom better than my father. I'm not going to be satisfied if you instruct me on anything else. So Narad was impressed. Okay, this is a Kshatriya tendency. So here also we see Bhima. He was not really, he was stubborn. He said, I can't do that. I can't follow these Ekadashis. Tell me one thing I can do. That's the backstory here. So therefore, Vyasa is mentioning now Nirjala Ekadashi. And by voluntarily abstaining from drinking even water from one sunrise to the next, intelligent persons can accumulate the merit of observing 12 Dwadashi Vratas. After you perform Ekadashi, you have to, it's not over yet, you have to again take your sacred
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I think we lost the connection. Manibhushan Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji, I think Prabhuji lost connection.
Yeah. We will wait for some time.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Prabhuji now left.
I think you will log in again.
Yeah, we'll wait. Prabhuji, you can make a call and see.
Yes, Prabhu, I am calling already.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. The power cut, it seems Prabhuji will join. In Vrindavan, there is some, I think, some power cut, usual power cut. Prabhu will join. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, few more announcements are there. We are nearing for another festival, Chidadahi festival. That is coming on 23rd. On that day, we'll have a special class on Panihati, evening 6 o'clock, by Prem Sarup Prabhuji from ISKCON Calcutta. And next day is Snan Yatra. Snan Yatra also we have a special class by His Grace Jagsakshi Das Prabhuji from ISKCON Trivandrum. So please available for all these classes in the evening.
Prabhuji has sent message. Prabhu is trying to reconnect. So he's trying
Okay,
to.
we'll wait, Prabhuji. No problem.
Okay. Anyone wants to do kirtan? We can have kirtan for till Prabhu joins. Anantama Gopal Prabhu, Amalarjan Prabhu.
They are not there, I think. Antham Prabhu is there.
Yeah, we can ask Prabhu to.
Hare Krishna. Dimple can do it.
Yes,
Yeah,
Prabhu,
yeah,
please.
please, Dimple, you can start now.
Have it.
Krishna Dandava Pranam. Krishna Banaya, Krishna Prasthaya, Mukundale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamine Namah Krishna Banaya, Krishna Prasthaya, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhu. Welcome, Prabhu.
Sorry, this is Vrindavan life. It's going to be cut off sometimes. Okay, I don't know where you were when we got cut off, so you have to remind me. I just noticed that the screen was suddenly lost while I was speaking. So what was I saying? As
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. We were Nath Pranam Prabhu. Vasudeva instructing Bhimsena about this Ekadassi.
Okay,
You were
let me.
Single Ekadassi.
You were talking about the next day, taking a bath.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So
Dwadashi day is what
let
we
me-
should know. How to
all right.
complete.
Thereafter, in the early morning of Dwadashi, you should first bathe and then give water and gold in charity to the Brahmanas while observing the correct procedures. Vitivat. After doing this, one should have his meal in the association of the Brahmanas. O Bhima, here now, as I describe the benefit one attains by following this vow. There is no doubt that those who observe this vow of Ekadashi throughout the year achieve great benefit. Lord Keshava, who holds a conch, club, and disc in his hands, informed me of this. This is Vyasadeva speaking. O best of men, it is a fact that by observing Nirjala Ekadashi, one attains wealth, grains, good children, good fortune, and happiness. The fierce and cruel Yamadutas, who have gigantic forms, who can assume any form at will, and who carry a stick and a rope in their hands, cannot approach such a person. The fortunate devotee who observes this vow is taken to the abode of Lord Vishnu after death by the Vishnu Dutas, who are dressed in yellow garments and who can travel faster than the mind. He's saying here, Vyasadeva, if you perform strictly, Vidhivat, perfectly, this Nirjala Ekadashi, you will go back to Godhead after this life. Very strong statement. Kincha toyasya niyamam yastu kurute. He says, an exalted Vaishnava who observes a total fast on this day without even drinking water obtains the merit of donating millions of gold coins during each prahara. Oh my God. That's a prahara means a 3-hour period. And so that means how many are there in the day? Ashta praharas. So if you give millions of gold coins in each prahara, then this is the result you get. So, moreover, one who gives charity, takes a holy bath, chants mantras, or performs a fire sacrifice the day after the Ekadashi, he achieves inexhaustible pious credit. This is the statement of Lord Krishna. Snanam, danam, japam, homam, dwadashya kurute naraha, tat sarvan, chakshayam praptam, etat krishnasya bhashitam. Okay. O king, what is the use of observing other religious principles? Simply by observing a complete fast while following the prescribed rules and regulations on Nirjala Ekadashi, one will be transferred to the abode of Lord Vishnu. It's further said, O Bhima Sain, those who have observed this pure Nirjala Ekadashi have delivered all their family members and will also take with them 100 persons who are not their family when they ascend to the abode of Lord Krishna. So you not only take your family members back to Godhead, but you take 100 people that are not even blood relatives. You take them also. That's how much Keshava is pleased by persons who actually do this thing properly, strictly. Those who have not observed this Ekadashi are their own worst enemies. Such persons are sinful, wretched miscreants. Of this there is no doubt. Vyasadeva speaks. One who hears the discussion of this vow with devotion and who glorifies this vow will certainly attain the heavenly planets after death. He should not entertain any doubt in this regard. As mentioned earlier, a Vaishnava should make a resolution. That means sankalpa. You have to say it out loud while touching water and chanting the appropriate mantra before observing this vow in accordance with the prescribed rules and regulations. It's always qualified like that. Yata praglikitam kritva sankalpam niyamam vrate jalam adaya grahniyan mantranena vaishnavaha. We always have to follow the vidhis. Vidhi. Vidhi means the Shastra conjunctions. Whatever we do, it has to be according to Shastra conjunctions, strictly. So he continues, for the pleasure of Lord Keshava and for completely subduing my mind and senses, I will observe a total fast without even drinking water on this Ekadashi. It seems that Vyasadeva himself is very enthusiastic about this. So, one should give up the use of water throughout the day and night, but one can use water for performing achaman, and one can honor Jananamritam, those two things. On this Ekadashi, one should perform abhishek to a golden deity of Lord Trivikrama with milk and other substances. That sounds like Panchamrita Snan. After completing the regular worship. So it's a special abhishek you do. After bathing and drying the deity, one should offer him new clothes and then worship him with offerings of sandalwood paste, flowers, and obeisances. One should then remain awake the entire night singing and dancing before the Lord. It's not so easy to sing and dance all night long, especially if you've not had a drop of water even during the day. So it's not an easy thing to do this. But we can see here how pleased the Lord becomes if we do, if we can. The next morning, after completing one's duties, such as bathing, one should worship the deity of Lord Trivikrama with a heart filled with devotion. If one has the capacity, he should donate water pitchers decorated with sandalwood paste to the Brahmanas. Kumbha, Purna Kumbha, we call it. And, O Master of the demigods, O Master of the senses, he's telling us what is the mantra here for donating. You're speaking to the Brahmanas, it seems. O Master of the demigods, O Master of the senses, O Deliverer from material existence, may I attain the supreme destination by donating this water pitcher. If one has the financial means, he should give charity of gold, umbrellas, dhotis, chadars, shoes, and fine water pots to qualified Brahmanas, not Ponga Pandits. If one is able, he should feed qualified Brahmanas. Thereafter, he should drink some water, either from his brother's hand or from his own hand, and then sit down to silently have his meal in the company of his friends. This is the end of the description that I have. It seems to be going on beyond that because the sentence is broken off. But anyway, our time is up. So I'm going to stop here. And as I mentioned, there is also this glorification from Padma Purana Uttarakhanda Adhyaya 51, which what we just read may have been an excerpt of that Mahatmyam as well. And then, of course, it's described in Brahma Vaivarta Purana at some length, and the Ekadashi Mahatmyam, of course, is also. Garga Samhita also describes this Pandava Nirjala Ekadashi, among so many others. Okay, so I'm going to stop here with your permission. And if anyone has any questions or any comments, we can discuss for a little while. As you wish.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. It was a very enlightening class for all of us. I have one question. We used to start the Ekadassi with a sankalpa that we will do full Nirjal without taking any water. If someone is getting tired in the afternoon or in the evening after 6 o'clock, and if they are taking water, how the effect will be? How much will be effect?
You have to know your own capacity. This is a very, very important thing in all things regarding Krishna consciousness. What is that verse? Swe swayadhikare yanishtha saguna parikirtada. It is always glorified to understand what is your, I want to say, capacity, adhikar. So that's important because you have to make a sankalpa in the beginning of your vrata, as you've mentioned also. So you should not bite off more than you can chew, as the English expression goes. You have to know what you can do, and you have to take the vow to do that thing only. If you live up to your vow, then you get the fruit attached to that vow. And if you cannot take the most strict vow we've already described, if you cannot do that, then there's so many other options that are less significant maybe because they have less of a fruit. This is a little bit of a fruitive mentality that doesn't really require to be there. And I think that probably for this reason, it would seem Srila Prabhupada didn't really emphasize these kinds of things so much during the 12 years that he was in our presence. The very simple standards Prabhupada insisted on. Because the point is that once you can assess your own adhikar, you should vow to follow that thing, and you should do so rigidly. The sinful reaction results from taking a vow and then not following it. That is the problem. So if you cannot do the whole thing, then fine. But whatever you vow to do, that thing you have to do it. That is a commitment. That's the important principle. So it's actually enjoined that if a person is elderly, it's maybe not the best idea to tax the body so harshly as this vrata actually certainly does. If you have some health concerns, you also have to take those into consideration. My own doctor told me don't fast. I do anyway, but not the strict fast. So Prabhupada always encouraged, if you need to eat some fruits or some milk, that kind of thing, Ekadassi prasadam. But even then, if you can fast half a day, then you get so much more benefit. If you can fast until the evening, also that's better. So like this, there are different standards. But the point is that whatever you can do, you should vow to do that thing, which means you have to know yourself. And you should follow that vow very strictly. Then Keshala will be pleased. Is that okay? Does that answer your question?
Yes, Prabhuji, thank you very much. And Kishori Priya Mataji, you can ask.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam, all those to Srila Prabhupada. Could you say a little bit about how Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do the breaking of the fast?
Breaking of the fast, yeah. As I recall, and I don't know because I didn't have that much of Prabhupada's personal association, but I think he was not even really strict about following the Puranas. But I may be mistaken about that. This question is better presented to someone like Hari Shauri Prabhu or Shrutakirti or others who really had more of Prabhupada's association. What I can say for sure is that Prabhupada was not really so strict about Ekadashi except for these two things that I mentioned. You do not, under any circumstances, take grains or beans. And in general, he was also very strict that Ekadashi, you should definitely increase your service. You should chant more. You should try to hear and chant more and try to serve Krishna as best as you can. So I don't know if I can answer better than that. I hope that's satisfactory.
Thank
Anything
you.
else?
Okay. Yeah, there is one more question, Praji. On Ekadassi days, people devotees used to take a vow for somebody else benefit. How that will benefit from Praji?
To fast on someone else's behalf.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it's never any harm to do that. I can't give an authoritative answer. Off the top of my head, I don't have a ready reference to give as a praman for that sort of thing, but I know that people do it. We say prayers for other people also, and we can fast for other people. We can observe vrats for other people. Srila Prabhupada's own mother did it for him. And, you know, how much of that actually is really valid? I don't know. I wouldn't want to comment on that.
Okay, no problem. Any other questions or any comments?
Here is the general principle that should govern all these kinds of things. Smartavyam tatatam Vishnu, Vismartavyam najatache. That we should always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Whatever we do, sarva vidhi nishedhasyuhu etayore kinkara. Whatever the vidhis are there, the injunctions, and whatever the nishedhas or the prohibitions are there, they're all meant to serve this ultimate purpose, this goal, which is to be Krishna conscious, increase your Krishna consciousness. That was always Prabhupada's primary principle, and everything that he did was focused on that. He said that you can eat full prasadam for going out and preaching, sankirtana. Of course, on Ekadassi, that means no grains and beans, but otherwise you can eat a full meal if you have to preach. That he would accommodate anything for the purpose of preaching Krishna consciousness, practically speaking. But in general, for those who are just at home and engaging in ordinary activities, these vrats are there, and we should try to follow them vidhivat. Okay.
Shivaguna Prabhu, you
Anything
can
else?
proceed.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for giving your valuable time for us. Really, we are very much indebted for. And I know we have notified you at the last minute, and you have gracefully accepted the invitation. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for engaging me. I probably would have gone to bed by now. Krishna has allowed me to observe some fraction of the Harivasara properly by glorifying this process.
Thank you.
Okay,
Prabhu.
so thank you all very much.
Prabhu,
Thank you.
we would like to hear future also more from you, Prabhu. So on behalf of Kanyadesh devotees, we would like to express our heartfelt gratitude by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra 3 times.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna,
Hare
Rama, Rama. Hare Krishna,
Krishna, Hare
Krishna, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, श्री प्रभुपाद की जय, श्री मुकुंद दत्त प्रभु की जय, पांडव निर्जला एकादशी की जय। हरे कृष्ण। Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. And one more announcement on behalf of Kanyadesh devotees. We take a sankalpa of contributing $5,000 for Mayapur hospital facilities improvement, like special wards for the COVID patients, like oxygen providing, and extra beds and some breathing equipments like that. So from Kanyadesh, we took the Sankalpa for $5,000. By the grace of all the devotees' support, we achieved that and we already submitted that amount. So on behalf of all of our devotees, we wish to thank each one of you for your kind contribution. Hopefully we'll get the blessings from Radha Madhav and Panchatattva and Narasimhadev for all the devotees who are contributed. Once again, on behalf of all our devotees, we wish to thank each one of you. Hare Krishna. And as announced, day after tomorrow, we are celebrating Pani Hatti, very important festival in Vaishnava Sampradaya, Gaudiya Sampradaya. So we will hear the glories of Pani Hatti, the Dahi Chida festival, from a very senior devotee from Calcutta, His Grace Prem Sarup Prabhuji. We will be assembling at 6 p.m. So please join us. And the next day on 24th, we have Snani Yatra. It is also a very important festival for all of us. So we'll hear the glories of what important is Snani Yatra by His Grace Jagasashi Das Prabhuji from Skan Trivandrum. So please join for that also. So thank you very much for one and all for your association today. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can we do Arati now?
Yeah, Prabhuji, you can proceed.
Okay.
Prabhu, YouTube.
Yes, Prabhuji will.